What's up, guys? It's your favorite Kiwi coach, and give me 6 months of your time and I'll give you the best golf swing of your life. So welcome back to the channel. In this particular video, we're going to be reacting to a swing catalyst video where they're at some type of PGA show with Mike Adams. They're talking about 3 different types of pivots, 3 different types of forces with swing catalysts. It's going to be a very interesting video. So if you're interested in swing catalysts and using forces correctly, this is the perfect video for you. And let's go ahead and jump in. But before we get into the video, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, and that is Kiwi Golf Japan. If you did not know, YouTube does not pay the bills. So if you want to help support this YouTube channel and allow us to continue to make videos for you guys, after the video is over, check out that link down below, sign up, and it really helps support this YouTube channel. And now let's go ahead and react to Mike Adams and swing catalysts. So before we start to react to the video, I want to talk about exactly my points that I'm trying to get across in this particular video. So the first point that I want to get across is in this video, Mike Adams is going to be talking about the 3 different types of forces that swing catalysts use. And then also he's going to pair it to whatever type of pivot that you naturally have using Mike Adams' system of testing to see which pivot you are. Whichever one of those you are, you should have those forces peaking at certain times, and then other forces should be more dominant than the other. So I'm going to explain that first. Second, once I get past that, I'm going to start breaking down a little bit of his reasoning, a little bit of his logic behind his theories, and start to break down if they actually make sense or not, and if they should be something that you should also be trying as well. So now that we got that out of the way, let's start reacting to the first part of this video with Mike Adams.
We're looking at pressure shifts and ground reaction forces. How you're putting force in the ground. Now there are 3 basic ground reaction forces that we utilize. One is horizontal, which is a kind of a lateral force. Another is torque, which is rotation and shear. And the final one is verticals.
So now he clearly distinguished that he's talking about ground reaction forces, but for my audience at home, typically when we talk about force and torques, we're talking about the force and torque that the hands is applying to the grip and not necessarily what the feet is applying to the ground. So yes, both of those are going to be kinetics, right? Because they're talking about forces and torques. However, the main difference between the two is one is for the ground and then one is going to be the hands on the grip. So now that we got that out of the way, let's continue to hear what Mike Adams has to say.
All 3 of those forces come into play when you're hitting golfer. Every golfer utilizes lateral, rotation, and vertical. Scott and I coined this a few years ago, glide, spin, launch. Everyone has glide, then spin, then launch. Scott came up with and called it the kinetic sequence. The only thing...
Let's stop it there. So he just brought up what's called the kinetic sequence, which again, this person right here, Dr. Scott Lynn, was the person who coined that. And what they're talking about is all great players have horizontal force first, torque force first, and then vertical force first. They have it in that order, right? That is going to be the sequence. Now that doesn't mean that all great players have horizontal force at the same specific point in time, which is something they're going to be talking about here in a second. But that is what they're trying to talk about when they talk about kinetic sequence. All great players have that sequence: horizontal force, then torque force, and then vertical force in that order. Let's continue.
Horizontal happens first, rotation second, and verticals third. The second thing we need to understand, in that sequence, there is what we call peak force windows, okay? Between the top of the backswing and left arm basically at 45.
All right, let's stop it there and explain what a peak force window is. So first off, let's explain what peak force means. So let's say that you have horizontal force. So throughout the downswing, what point throughout the downswing is when you peak with the most horizontal force, right? When is that? So what they're talking about is all great players do it within specific windows. So he's talking about for horizontal peak force, it happens anywhere from the very top of the swing to right when the left arm is right around 45 degrees relative to the ground, or you could roughly say right around shoulder height. That is going to be when the horizontal force is going to be peaking for all great players. Again, remember, it's going to be a window, right? It's that period of time. It's not necessarily a specific point in time. That's really important.
Peak horizontal happens, okay? And between left arm at 45 and left arm parallel to the ground, peak torque happens. And between left arm parallel to the ground and shaft parallel to the ground,
that's when vertical force happens.
It's not exactly on those spots. It's in that window we see peak verticals happen. So as long as you happen in your right windows, you cannot believe how much farther you hit it.
So this is a really important point of the video because it's going to establish the next part of the video where they start to talk about different pivots, and then within those different pivots, yes, you're going to want to have the same kinetic sequence. However, different pivots should be focusing on different forces that they're trying to optimize, as well as those forces maybe have different amounts of peaks and slightly different timings of peaks amongst those pivots. But let's continue to hear what Mike Adams has to say.
When you put people on the plates and they're hitting shots, if everything is happening out of sequence or happening early or late, it affects how they hit the golf ball. When they get them back in longer and straighter. Now, another thing we need to understand is because we utilize, there's different posts, and each post utilizes one force more heavier than another, okay?
So now he's starting to get into the point of the video where I just talked about. So the three posts when it comes to Mike Adams' theory is there's going to be the front post, or someone who makes the backswing pivot more so around the left leg or the lead leg. There's going to be the center post, someone who makes the backswing pivot a little bit more centered with the pressure. And then there's going to be the rear post, or someone who makes the pivot a little bit more towards the rear side or the trail leg. And those are going to be the three different types of posts. So what he just said there is each different type of post should have a slightly different kind of peak pattern when it comes to the forces. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't all have the same kinetic sequence. It's more so when you get into the finer details of how much they're peaking for horizontal and kind of what point within that window they are peaking, they will subtly change amongst the different types of posts. That's what he's trying to bring up now. So let's continue to listen and see what he has to say.
Rear posts like Scott is going to utilize more horizontal, and they'll use torque and vertical as their braking action. A front post golfer, somebody who pivots back and through around the front leg, is going to utilize more verticals, but it's not a sharp peak. It's more of a gradual peak, and it happens. So understanding what force you utilize and
So when he talked about understanding what force to utilize, he does mean that you will be utilizing all three of those forces. That is a definite guarantee. He's more so telling you, which force should you really focus on trying to optimize and really get at the right specific time, as well as the right specific peak amount relative to what you can do. All right, that's it for you guys on YouTube. But before you guys click off, let me give you some quick wrap-up points. So when it comes to the most valid point in this video, I think the kinetic sequence is going to be that. All great players, no matter who they are going to have a horizontal force first, the torque force second, and then the vertical force last when it comes to the downswing sequence, right? So that is the kinetic sequence relative to ground reaction forces, and that is absolutely a must. Now, when it comes to matching up your kinetic sequence and kind of the timings and the peak amounts and what you're focusing on relative to your post, relative to a Mike Adams theory, that's when I think it gets a little bit dodgy, it gets a little bit gray area, and that's when I start to kind of talk about the reasoning and the logic behind a lot of what he says doesn't necessarily add up. However, if you want to know my true opinions, well, definitely you're going to have to sign up for the membership site so you can watch this full video and get all the information that I talked about after this video is over. But other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this type of video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share all that good stuff. Sign up for the Kiwi Platinum membership. It really supports us. And if you want to take lessons from myself, sign up for the Kiwi Coach 6-month program. I'll see you guys in the next video.